We know who the person operating the scheme is because when we made the first house search, we found a mobile phone in the freezer. And on that phone, we could find a recorded conversation between a guy that is believed to be one of the top in this network. And he was angry. The money laundering scheme had been stopped. And you can see from that discussion that he appears to be the man in charge.
It's money make a world go round. So, yeah.
Welcome to The Laundry, the podcast connecting AML, compliance, and financial crime to the real world. I'm your host, Marit, the CEO of Strise, and in this episode, we are asking, how can a VAT loophole fund criminal empires? The one thing you need to know about financial crime is the most dramatic criminal actions can often be hidden behind the dullest of language. A VAT refund is a phrase which is unlikely to have your pulse raising.
VAT, or value-added tax, plays a pivotal role in Sweden's tax system, applied to most goods and services. It's a multi-stage tax, meaning it's added at various production and supply stages, ultimately reflected in the consumer price. The general and reduced VAT rates cater to different goods and services, aligning with the government's goals for economic balance and social welfare. VAT is significant for funding essential public services like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. It's a primary revenue source for the government, crucial for maintaining Sweden's high living standards.
But hidden within this is a financial loophole which is literally taking money from the state and putting directly into the hands of drug traffickers, terrorists, and criminal gangs. In today's episode, I'm here with a great guest to discuss the rise of the missing trader intra-community fraud, how this fraud is taking billions from the Swedish economy and others across Europe, and what banks should be looking out for. To dive into this topic, I'm here with Jerker Asplund, Deputy Chief Prosecutor of Ekobrottsmyndigheten, which is, for those who are not in Sweden, the Swedish Economic Crime Authority. Welcome to The Laundry, Jerker. Can you tell our listeners about you, your background, and for our global listeners, what Ekobrottsmyndigheten is?
Indeed, my name is Jerker Asplund, and as you said, I'm a Deputy Chief Prosecutor at the SECA, the Swedish Economic Crime Authority. My background is I'm a lawyer from Lund University, and I have been a prosecutor since 2007. Before that, I was an enforcement officer. So I have been dealing with criminal money my entire professional life. And I have been involved as one of approximately 10 Swedish prosecutors in the MTIC frauds, the large attacks against the Swedish and EU's VAT system for the last years.
Super exciting, and let's dive into the conversation so our listeners can learn more about it. But the reason why we are here today is because I was at Penningtvättsdagarna, the largest anti-money laundering conference in Sweden, and I heard your talk on this topic. And it wasn't just me, but everyone in the audience was on the edge of their seats and taking pictures of your slide because this case just blew me away. But before we get into the details about the specific case, could you explain to our listeners a little bit more about this VAT refund system and how it works in the EU to set the scene?
Exactly. The VAT system in the EU is fully harmonized, meaning that the cross-border trade looks the same in all the EU member states. The rate of the VAT could be different between the member states, but the system works the same way, meaning that if a company trades from, say, the Netherlands to Sweden cross-border, there will be no VAT charged for the cross-border sale. But then, when you start trading the same goods within Sweden, you will charge VAT from each company. If you then sell the goods back to the EU, again, that particular sale between Sweden and, for this example, Czech Republic, the VAT will be zero in that trade, to simplify it. What the VAT fraud means is that you have a company that buys easy manageable items, for example, mobile phones. They could be real mobile phones or they could be fake mobile phones. And then they trade them from company to company in Sweden. But you never pay any VAT into the Swedish tax system. Because in the beginning of the trade, you have a company called missing trader or a company called a cross invoicer. The missing trader does not pay any VAT because you deliberately makes it go bankruptcy immediately after it has made a declaration to the Swedish tax authority, or the cross invoicer makes false deductions of the VAT via false invoices from false companies. Either way, no VAT is paid to the Swedish tax authority. Then the goods is traded from company to company. You often have many companies in one line because you want to make it very hard to detect who is in fact governing those companies. The last company is called the broker. The last company is the one that sells back to an EU country. That company tells the Swedish tax authority, now we have sell this goods back to another country. And in the beginning of this trade, there was a lot of VAT that we paid, and we want that money back. The Swedish tax authority pays that money to the broker. But the thing is, since the first company either has gone bankruptcy or has deducted all the VAT through false invoices, the result is that the Swedish tax authority pays a lot of money to the company. No money has gone into the system. This repeats itself in my example, in the Czech Republic. It repeats itself in the Netherlands. It repeats itself in Germany. And in this way, EU is losing the astonishing sum of 60 billion euro each year in money paid right into the criminals' pockets through the VAT system.
That is a shockingly high number. 60 billion euros lost, paid out of taxpayer money into criminal gangs. But just to take a step back and repeat what you said. So basically, what you have to do in order to enable this fraud is to set up a chain of companies across borders. So there's one company, let's say in Sweden, who import goods from the Netherlands. That company either goes bankrupt quite quickly or they set up fake invoices to null out the VAT. Then you have a complex chain of other businesses within Sweden to make this very complicated to detect. And at the end, you have another business who then sell goods out of Sweden again. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. The money goes out from the Swedish system, the Swedish taxpayers, with the broker, the last company in the chain. And the first company in the chain is the one that enables the fraud. So the most important companies are the first company and the last company. The others are called buffers, and they are there mostly to put curtains before so the tax authority can't really see what is going on.
And then it's the same criminals then who control the enabling company and that last company in this value chain.
In the particular case that I told about at the money laundering days, we could see that at the top there were certain individuals who governed the entire chain through different strawmans in different companies.
I hadn't really heard about this case before your talk. So how did it come to your attention that this scheme has been corrupted by criminals?
This case is not the only VAT fraud that has been up to Swedish courts. We have 15 judgments. We have 75 ongoing preliminary investigations. 130 companies are a matter of criminal investigation. As far as now, 143 years of prison time has been sentenced to different individuals in Swedish courts, which is a lot regarding the Swedish penal system. In the Swedish penal system, that is a lot. And in Sweden has lost 4.5 billion Swedish crowns. So all EU states lose money. Sweden lose a lot, but as far as I know, not more or less than other EU countries. But to tell about this specific case.
Yes, the Sisu-Net AB case.
Exactly.
Tell our listeners, because that was the case you presented, and just what can you tell us about this particular case?
The Sisu-Net case and the Nordic mobile service case was companies in Sweden, in Uppsala, Örebro, and in Stockholm. They both had functioned as a mobile phone brokers. They sold pre-used mobile phones, and they had employees, and they had normal turnover and worked as normal companies. The companies back in the scheme were mostly buffers, and they didn't have employees. They often have changed. So when you checked at the company register, you could see that it perhaps could have been a hairdresser, and then all of a sudden it changed its business to mobile phones. But those three companies investigated were not changing the business. They just expanded it rapidly. And the suspects of the investigations were people who were in charge of the companies. There was a large turnover increase on all the Swedish bank accounts. So all banks could have seen that those companies have gone from a turnover of, for example, 12 million Swedish crowns 1 year to the next year of 425 million Swedish crowns.
That is an astonishing growth rate.
That is an astonishing growth rate, and if you check their explanations in their year's summary, which they are obliged to give to the Swedish company registrar, you could see that the explanation was not very believable. They just stated that we have new, better deals, and we have new suppliers, and very good supplier deals, and the customers now want to buy it. All explanations that were not, they were very doubtful. So what is interesting when you look at a scheme like this is that you have the money, the mobile phones, they could be fake or they could be real. Either, and you don't really need to investigate that in detail when you investigate the crime, but you can see that they are bought, fake bought or real bought, through the companies I discussed, from the missing trader or the cross invoicer, via a lot of buffer companies to the broker companies and back to the EU. So the mobile phones go that way. The money that are laundered goes the opposite way. So they are paid from the tax authority and the companies in Europe to the broker, in this case Sisu-Net, Nordic and Mobilalliansen, and back company after company until it reaches the people who are really making money out of this.
And how much money did the people behind Sisu-Net, or behind this particular case, how much VAT refunds were they able to get out before they were caught?
The owner of Nordic and Mobilalliansen, who were broker in one of the cases, managed to get us out 126 million crowns. The owners of Sisu-Net, around 250 million crowns.
Oh, wow. For our international listeners, that is in euros divided by 10, so around 12 million euros and 20 million euros. And that is taxpayer money right out. But this money, were you able to freeze some of the assets and get it back, or has it just vanished?
Very few. From the owner of Nordic, we seized approximately 7 million crowns, which were forfeited and have gone back to the state. But the only other money has been lost. And the rest of the money in Sisu-Net, we didn't manage to seize anything. And this is also because it's not the owner of those companies, those broker companies, it is not them. They have earned approximately 2% of the invoices made. But the people who really earn money from this scheme is the person in charge who are sitting in Central Europe.
And did you ever find out who the person behind this particular scheme was, or did you just get the people who were operating the businesses?
We know who the person operating the scheme is, because when we made the first house search after a search warrant, we found a mobile phone in the freezer at one of the owners of Sysnet. And on that phone, we could find a recorded conversation between a guy that is believed to be one of the top in this network. And he was angry with the people of Sysnet because they have stopped paying the money back. The money laundering scheme had been stopped by them. And therefore, he brings some kind of person who is to persuade them in a perhaps little threatful way. And at the meeting, the entire meeting is recorded. And you can see from that discussions and other discussions that he appears to be the man in charge.
And this person is still, like, he's not indicted, he is still free and continuing operating this type of fraud from Central Europe.
We know who this guy is, and he is, according to my sources, not free to conduct any more frauds.
For all of our listeners who work with AML and KYC in banks, what are some of the red flags that you think they should be looking for in their due diligence processes?
First and foremost, the red flag is, why is the turnover increasing so much? If you can see that suddenly a lot of money passes through the company's bank accounts, they get into the account and they fly away as quickly as they came in. That's a red flag. Ask the company why. Can you please tell us how we can have this giant increase in turnover? Check the company, if you can, who is paying. Is it a Swedish company that until now only has been selling mobile phones to private Swedish customers and get the money in Swedish crowns? Is it all of a sudden a lot of European companies that you haven't heard of? And when you search them on the internet, you perhaps don't see what kind of companies they are. And those companies are paying incredible sums all of a sudden to your bank account. That's a big red flag. Keep the contact with the customer. The bank should understand the nature of the client and the business the client does. It must know its customer. That's why it's called Know Your Customer. And in this case, we could see that apart from one Swedish bank, no bank asked any questions whatsoever regarding why did large European companies all of a sudden pay huge amounts to the accounts and why they were transferred as quickly as they came in. And when the bank sees anything suspect, they need to report it to the financial police and to the SECA, the Swedish Economic Crime Authority, as soon as possible. And there to take tough decisions immediately. Time is king. If you take the decisions quickly, you can prevent a large fraud rather quickly.
And a big shout out to that KYC AML analyst in the bank who actually were able to detect that something not normal was going on and did decide to freeze asset and report it. So it shows that the work people are doing in this really can matter. Your data problem
and your workflow problem?
Now it isn't your problem. Strise is your ultimate solution to streamline customer due diligence and perpetual KYC.
Transforming your AML strategy from a manual burden to an automated winner.
Nice!
With AI-centric automation at its heart, Strise fast-tracks your time to revenue.
And because we know the future is as uncertain as it is exciting,
Strise is modular by design.
Prepare for tomorrow's risks and regulations today. With flexibility that adapts to whatever the future holds.
And best of all,
you experience value from day one. Instant use out of the box.
Visit strise.ai and try our live demo today.
Back to the show. Let's just move on to a little bit more of the long-term consequences of this type of fraud, because in your talk at Penningtvet, you opened the whole thing by saying there is a ongoing large-scale attack on the European VAT system. That's quite dramatic language. What did you mean when you used that type of language?
Exactly the words I was saying. I should say that part of the attack has been stopped through dedicated work from the different national police agencies, from the European public prosecutors, from the national public prosecutors in different countries, and from tax police in different European countries. But the attack is still going on. And why I call it a large attack is because of the amount of money. I told you before that it was 60 billion euros each year. And we can also see, the Europol can see, that 2% of the criminals have 80% of the market in the EU, meaning that it is a small number of criminals who are at the top of this chain. They have criminal networks that they govern and that give them massive amount of money.
If there's just a few people on the top, what type of profiles are we talking about?
Very smart individuals that set up a lot of companies with strawmen. They change identities and they always make sure to have a lot of layers between them and the criminality. I cannot talk very much of them because there are ongoing preliminary investigations, but I can tell that much that we have a good hope in our European cooperation to make these people pay for their crimes.
It seems like there's a lot of great work going on to be able to stop this loophole, but are there any other measures you think that Europe or the European Union should do to make this crime even harder to commit?
Yes, what could be done is what we in Sweden is called reversed VAT, meaning that you can't make a demand on the Swedish tax authority when you do that cross-border trade that you should get the money paid from the Swedish tax authority. That is instead, it is reversed VAT. It should be paid by each and every company. This is in use now, for example, in mobile phones. The problem is, if you have this VAT system only with mobile phones, then of course the criminals switch to something completely different, like breathing masks or everything that could be charged with VAT and is easy to transport. So perhaps a reversed VAT on every single goods could be helpful. Also, the reversed VAT, at least in Sweden, is only used on invoices that are 100,000 crowns, 10,000 euros or more, meaning that the companies can very well divide the sales into a lot of invoices that goes with 50,000 crowns per invoice. Then you can still use the own system and you get the VAT refunded by the Swedish tax authority. So you could, for example, take away that limit of 100,000 crowns and change so the reversed VAT goes for all kinds of products and services.
I see that we are nearing time, so I just have a final question, and that is, what are the real-world consequences of not getting this right, of stopping this type of fraud?
The real-world consequences are, of course, that people on top of a criminal hierarchy steals huge amounts of money that we could use to pay childcare, schools, hospitals, and this goes in all European countries. Also, we do not know what this money will be used for. This money that the people on top are stealing from us could, of course, be used in all other kinds of criminal activity and probably are, meaning that we are funding criminal networks doing all kinds of criminality via this system.
When you say it like that, I'm at least very glad that a lot of measures have been taken, and the fact that you have been able to uncover, stop, and prosecute several of these frauds going on in Sweden. But we're coming to the end of the episode, so we're going to dish out some quick-fire questions. So I'll say a question and just reply with the first thing that pops into your mind. All right? Are you ready?
Yep.
Let's go. What are the biggest lessons for banks and their compliance teams when it comes to this type of fraud?
Know your customer in reality. Dare to ask questions as soon as you see something very peculiar.
What is the most obvious sign of this type of fraud?
A big increase in turnover, and that they suddenly start to sell to European companies that are not heard of before.
And what happens if we don't get a grip of these problems?
They will continue. It doesn't matter how good we make the VAT system, you will always find a way around this system. And that's why the Know Your Customer, the due diligence departments are so important.
And is this VAT loophole funding criminal empires?
As far as we know, yes.
That brings this spin of the laundry to an end. Jerker, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find and connect with you?
The Swedish Economic Crime Authority, and it's just to send an email, for example.
Money makes the world go round.
And thanks to everyone who was listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, check out the back catalog and follow The Laundry on your podcast platform of choice. We'd also love for you to share the podcast on your social media channels, tell your colleagues about it, drop an episode in a group chat. It really helps people find us. Got a story you think deserves the laundry treatment? You can comment on the Strise LinkedIn page, my LinkedIn page, or email laundry@strise.ai. Your host for this episode was me, Marit. Our producer was Matthew. Our engineers were Dominic and Nicholas. The Laundry is proudly produced by Strise, the AML automation cloud. Your data problem and your workflow problem. Now it isn't your problem. Visit strise.ai for more information. See you next time.
Makes the world go round. Money makes the world go round. Yeah, money make a world go round.